This is chapter 3 of Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Looking Glass Insects. Of course, the first thing to do was to make a grand survey of the country that she was going to travel through. It's something very like learning geography, thought Alice, as she stood on tiptoe in hopes of being able to see a little further. Principal rivers, there are none. Principal mountains, I'm on the only one, but I don't think it's got any name. Principal towns, why, what are those creatures making honey down there? They can't be bees. Nobody ever saw bees a mile off, if you know. And for some time she stood silent, watching one of them that was bustling about among the flowers, poking its proboscis into them. Just as if it was a regular bee, thought Alice. However, this was anything but a regular bee. In fact, it was an elephant. As soon as Alice found out, though the idea quite took her breath away at first, and what enormous flowers they must be was her next idea. Something like cottages with the roofs taken off, and stalks put to them. And what quantities of honey they must make. I think I'll go down and... No, I won't just yet, she went on, checking herself, just as she was beginning to run down the hill and trying to find some excuse for turning shy so suddenly. It'll never do to go down among them without a good long branch to brush them away. And what fun it'll be when they ask me how I like my walk. I shall say, oh, I like it well enough. Here came the favorite little toss of the head. Only it was so dusty and hot, and the elephants did tease so. I think I'll go down the other way, she said after a pause, and perhaps I may visit the elephants later on. Besides, I do so want to get into the third square. So with this excuse, she ran down the hill and jumped over the first of 6 little brooks. I'm not sure why there's all those asterisks there on the page next, but... Tickets, please, said the guard, putting his head in at the window. In a moment, everybody was holding out a ticket. They were about the same size as people and quite seemed to fill the carriage. Now then, show your ticket, child, the guard went on, looking angrily at Alice, and a great many voices all said together, like the chorus of a song, thought Alice, don't keep him waiting, child. Why, his time is worth £1,000 a minute. I'm afraid I haven't got one, said Alice in a frightened tone. There wasn't a ticket office where I came from. And again, the chorus of voices went on. There wasn't room for one where she came from. The land there is worth £1,000 an inch. Don't make excuses, said the guard. You should have bought one from the engine driver. And once more the chorus of voices went on with, the man that drives the engine, why, the smoke alone is worth £1,000 a puff. Alice thought to herself, there's no use in speaking. The voices didn't join in this time, as she hadn't spoken, but to her great surprise, they all thought in chorus. I hope you understand what thinking in chorus means, for I must confess that I don't. I guess it would mean you and somebody else are thinking the same thing. Better say nothing at all. Language is worth £1,000 a word. I shall dream about £1,000 tonight, I know I shall, thought Alice. All this time the guard was looking at her, first through a telescope, then through a microscope, and then through an opera glass. At last he said, you are traveling the wrong way, and shut up the window and went away. So young a child, said the gentleman sitting opposite to her. He was dressed in white paper. Ought to know which way she is going, even if she doesn't know her own name. A goat that was sitting next to the gentleman in white shut his eyes and said in a loud voice, she ought to know her way to the ticket office, even if she doesn't know her alphabet. There was a beetle sitting next to the goat. It was a very queer carriage full of passengers altogether. Again, that might be a fun one to draw in your notebook. And as the rule seemed to be that they should all speak in turn, he went on with, she'll have to go back from here as luggage. Alice couldn't see who was sitting beyond the beetle, but a hoarse voice spoke next. Change engines, it said, and was obliged to leave off. Sounds like a horse, Alice thought to herself, and an extremely small voice close to her said, you might make a joke on that, something about a horse, and horse, you know? So they're using some wordplay there. The first one means horse, the animal, and the second one means horse, can't talk. Then a very gentle voice in the distance said, she must be labeled last with care, you know? And after that, other voices went on. What a number of people there are in the carriage, thought Alice, saying, she must go by post, as she's got a head on her. She must be sent as a message by the telegraph. She must draw the train herself the rest of the way, and so on. But the gentleman dressed in white paper leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "Never mind what they all say, my dear, but take a return ticket every time the train stops." "Indeed I shan't," said Alice rather impatiently. "I don't belong to this railway journey at all. I was in a wood just now, and I wish I could get back there." "You might make a joke on that," said a little voice close to her ear. "Something about you would if you could, you know." "Don't tease so," said Alice, looking in vain to see where the voice came from. "If you're so anxious to have a joke